Now, before we can start deploying our website, the first thing we have to do and we have to understand is something called version control. And we're going to be using the most popular technology for version control, which is Git and GitHub. So let's talk about version control in its simplest form. Let's say that I create a new code file and I write a few lines in it. Now I decide to put it under version control using Git, and let's say that I call this save point as number 1. Now this is my first version. So later on, as I progress, I write maybe a few more lines of code. And at this point, I decide to make another save point, and I call this my second version. So further down the line, I accidentally screw up my entire code file and it's irreparable, and I get to the point where I would rather burn my entire code file rather than having to try and fix it. You do get into these situations because very often your code is interlinked and each class depends on another, and sometimes you can screw up in a way where, all hope is lost. And I simply just want to roll back to the last save point. I can do that using Git. I can do that using other tools as well, but the most popular tool and the one that we're going to be talking about is Git. So you can either compare your current code file, so the current mess that you've made, against a previous version, so at any of the save points before. Alternatively, you can simply just roll back to a previous version. And it doesn't have to be the one that was immediately previous. You can go as far back or as far forwards as you like, as long as you know which version you want. So that's the theory. And in order to put it into practice, let's see how we can create some files locally on our computer and put it under version control. Now, if you're on a Mac, Git is already pre-installed with every Mac operating system. But if you're on Windows, I want you to head over to gitforwindows.org and click download to download it to your system. Now, once you go through the wizard, you should end up with a folder called Git installed to your C drive under Program Files. So I can see it right here. Now inside this folder, you're going to open up an application called Git Bash. And this is where we're going to be executing all our commands. So notice how previously we talked about the terminal and how to use command line control of your computer. If you forgot about this, head back to day 54 where we cover this in detail. But in order to get started and to be on the same page as the video, I want you to go ahead and CD over to your home directory. So that's the tilde symbol. And once you're there, you should see this as your location. Now here, you're basically at the same level as being inside your C drive, inside users, and then under your current logged in users directory. So this folder and all the things that it contains, you can see are the same as all the things that are printed out when I hit ls at this location. So you're now ready to follow along with the video and start working with Git. Now the first thing we're going to do is open up Terminal, and inside Terminal we're going to navigate to our desktop. And so if you're not familiar with the command line directory and you haven't watched the module on the command line, then I'm going to cd into this story directory. And if I show you with ls, you can see that it's completely empty. And similarly, inside Finder, I can show you the same thing. So let's go ahead and create some text files. So I'm going to use touch to create a file called chapter1.txt, and then I'm going to open chapter1.txt. Now on Windows, instead of using open as the command, it's start. So you can write start chapter1.txt and that will open it inside Notepad. And you can continue following along with the video. And it'll open it inside the default application, which is TextEdit on a Mac. Alternatively, you can use a text editor within the terminal, for example, Vim. Now, this is only for people who are really familiar with this, so it's totally up to you what you decide to use. But if you are not familiar with using terminal-based editors, then it's probably a good idea to just stick with the open command and use TextEdit. So let's go ahead and open chapter 1. And let's write something inside, shall we? Okay, so there's my masterpiece done. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to quit text edit. So that was our first chapter done. So now let's create a Git local repository and start tracking some of these file changes. So to initialize Git, we simply write git init, and as you can see, it's initialized an empty Git repository inside the story directory. Now, if you have a look inside Finder, you actually can't see this .git at all. But as we learned before, if you use ls-a, you can see all the hidden files, and you can see that .git is right there. And it's going to be used to track all your changes, to commit your changes, and to perform version control. So we're currently inside the story directory, and you can also call this the working directory. So as I mentioned before, using Git and learning about version control, it comes with some of its own terminology and language. So I'm going to try and debunk and simplify a lot of these terms that you'll come across, just so that we can all be on the same page and we all understand what's going on. So currently we are inside the working directory, which is the story directory. And here, in order to start tracking the changes of my files, for example, chapter1.txt, then I need to add this file to what's called a staging area. And that is basically an intermediate place where you can pick and choose which files inside your working directory that you want to commit. So to see what's currently inside your staging area, you can use the git status command. And it shows you that there are untracked files which will be shown in red. And this is something that's simply inside your working directory, so inside here, but it's not yet in the staging area. So in order to add it to the staging area and to start tracking changes in it, then we have to use the command git add. So we're going to type git add, and we're going to type the file name. So in this case, it's chapter1.txt. So go ahead and hit enter. And then if we try using git status again, you can see that that file has been added as a new file, and it is now green. So this is now in the staging area and it's ready to be committed. So let's go ahead and commit this under version control. So the command is git commit, and I'm going to use the -m flag to add a commit message. So the commit message is really, really important. It's something that helps you keep track of what changes you have made in each commit. So when you create a new save point, you want to be as explicit as possible about what changes were made between the last save point and this current save point. So for our initial commit, we can use something very simple like initial commit. And this shows that this is our starting point. Alternatively, if you want to be slightly more specific, because in our case, we've actually completed chapter 1. So you can write complete chapter 1. Now, the thing that you'll realize is that usually with commit messages, they are written in the present tense, and this is the best practice. So whereas it would probably make more sense, I guess at least in my head anyways, to write completed chapter 1 as this save point, it's actually by convention that you should always use the present tense. So it's like you are doing it now. You're submitting your changes now. So let's go ahead and hit enter.